Hello and welcome to the show. We are here today on Forza Horizon 5 with another showdown. Now this one is all about the kind of modern livable supercar, if you like. A vehicle that is still, well, kind of looks like a supercar, still very fast, but is easier to use on a day-to-day basis, if you like. Things like this McLaren GT, for example. Now, there are a few oddballs thrown in, things like the Camaro, the Mustang, maybe even the Taycan to a degree. I mean, McLaren is a car that I shall be honest, had completely forgotten was new to Forza, and completely forgotten it existed in real life. I'm not sure I quite see the point of it, but we're going to see how it goes in this one. Of course, the all-wheel drive cars actually started at the front, so well, that's. Not only are they going to launch better than us, but they start in front of us as well, so they're going to bolt off. The Taycan is going to struggle at the circuits. So I mean, these are going to go through a series of tests, some racing, some time trials, some drag races, etc. Things like the Taycan, for example, that'll probably be quick when it comes to the drag race, but it is likely to struggle around here. It's very heavy. The McLaren, it's not actually the nicest thing in the world to drive. It's quite understeery as it understeers its way through there. The Audi has got to the lead of the race. Aston Martin has passed us and is now off after the two all-wheel drive machines ahead. We've got a Mercedes that's catching us relatively quickly. Oh, the Taycan is struggling for understeer. I am struggling for understeer as well. So yeah, we'll be worse in the Porsche. Mercedes, oh, the Porsche is going to get mugged here, and I do not want to be out wide through here. This is a difficult place to be stuck on the outside, but we complete the pass just. Here comes the Mustang. That's a scary sight. GT500 Shelby there. I mean, you would think, you would think once upon a time that up against a bunch of European supercars. However, here it just outturns my McLaren. It's just gone. We have got a little bit of top end perhaps on it, like ultimate top end, but it has a lot more speed through the corners. I mean, the ultimate top end might be because that thing's got some downforce going on. The GTR is about to come under threat from the Mercedes. In fact, the Shelby just dove straight past that GTR. In fact, the Camaro's, where did that come from? I didn't even know that was catching. Camaro's gone. That's not even the 1LE, because that's basically a full-on track car, race car thing. That's a normal ZL1 or whatever. Still got way more grip than the McLaren. We have more grip than the GTR though, so we might be able to chase that down. The Aston leads, but that Aston's going to come under threat from the American cars soon. The Merc might not be too far away from getting involved there as well. The Audi's out wide and starting to get caught. We are going to look for a way past the GTR at some point. Don't slide through there, don't hit the wall. The Porsche is behind us, is starting to catch two. Ewan has had a little bit of a bad lap and the R8 has lost some ground here. GTR slid through the puddle. We have got top speed on the Nissan, and Nissan is struggling a little bit here, and we will pass the GTR on the run into turn 3 here. Big fight going on. Sadly, I've just not got the pace to be involved in that big fight up at the front. The Aston leads from a Mustang, then a Camaro, and then a Mercedes, I think. I think Russie's just lost out now. Yeah, we move up. Oh, Porsche's coming with us as well. Can we catch Ewan? That might be the question. Can the McLaren GT chase down the R8 V10 here? I might get passed by the bloody Porsche. That thing's a monster through the corners in comparison to me. I simply cannot take anywhere near the speed that Porsche can. We will have to give it a little bit of space through there. One thing we do have is top speed. Yeah, we do have top speed on the Porsche. Oh, but oh dear, I can't turn through there. Porsche unfortunately got stuck on the outside, and yeah, I'm at the limit of the grip. I think it tagged the rear of my car, and that just doesn't help. That Porsche thing is so quick though; it will probably catch back up and be past us before the end of the race, if it gets half a chance. Ewan is desperately trying to cling on with a little bit of a laggy R8 there. We're actually nicely enough through that corner for once, which is helpful. A lot of smoke pouring off these battles up in front. Longbow's trying to cling on with the Aston Martin. I think it's just lost out now. in all of this. Yeah, we've not got the pace of the group ahead. I'm trying my very best. I mean, we're just about keeping them in visual range, but that's, I think, helped probably because they're fighting as much as they are. They weren't in this huge battle for position. I don't think there's much I could do because we just struggle too much. Say we struggle with too much honesty, we just don't have the overall grip in this one. We just can't carry the same speed that they can. Yeah, Porsche's already almost back on us. Again, that thing is so fast. It's so fast in the corners, it's got absolutely no straight line speed, but that's got a crap ton of grip. Oh, we're going to wander a little bit wide through there. As expected, the Taycan is struggling a bit, especially around this sort of track. I mean, this is got some fast corners. If your car is very heavy and down on grip, oh, that's going to be a problem, and we've just wandered wide into a wall. God damn it. Struggling. Longboat, the Aston has gradually slipped back through there. Longboat clung on to the lead for as long as possible. Porsche's going to pass us, and there is nothing I can do about that one. Unless the Porsche makes a mistake through these next few corners. That's the speed it can take. It's just that much more than me. Oh, I mean, yeah, it can turn tighter. And while, yeah, we will beat it. I mean, we beat it in a drag race, although it has actually just made a little mistake. It hit the debris on the inside of that corner. I don't think it's going to matter though, because even as we come barreling along, I just can't maintain the speed through that final corner. We do have the top end, but we won't be able to use it. We will cross the line. It's not a great showing from the McLaren, and honestly, I don't really think I could have done much more with that one at that point in time. I made a couple of small errors, but there's just not the grip. There's just not the grip in that car. We weren't so far off the Aston or the Audi. That was a little bit more comparable than the GT4 Ferrari. But yeah, no match. Certainly no match for the two American cars, or that Mercedes even. But an entertaining race. At least to watch. Not so much for me. Now, the second test, rather than just another race around a track, would be a little hill climb stage for the vehicles to tackle. I mean, this gives a good range of corners, if you like. There are some low-speed sections. The start of this course is incredibly twisty, incredibly low speed, especially for cars on cold tyres as well. The Taycan would set off first. In fact, we run in reverse PI order. Now, this is not really a strength of the Porsche. Let's face it, it is heavy. It's the heaviest car here, and it tells. It struggles through these corners. Now, all-wheel drive is a bit helpful. Yes, because you could, certainly when the tyres are cold in these slow corners, you can launch the vehicle off of them quite nicely. That is true, but the downside of it often makes cars heavy, and the Taycan in particular is very, very heavy, and it struggles immensely with understeer through these sections. Now, there are, as I said, slow corners to start with. It does get faster as it goes further up the stage. I mean, we are uphill as well, so a little bit of test of power. We know the Porsche is brutally fast in terms of acceleration, but it struggles to utilise it. We saw it at the first race. Now, it's difficult to get the most out of it because you're just losing so much time in the corners. You just can't carry the same speed as some of the other cars. Now we're into the faster section, these sort of more sweeping S's, if you like, towards another little bit of a slower corner. I've got to try and get the cars stopped to get them turned in through here. Then we've got a fast run. The Taycan can start to stretch its legs a little bit. It's weird having absolutely no sound go. You're going to lose a sense of speed with the electric cars when you're following in the drone mode compared to the conventional combustion engines, if you like. Taycan still struggling. I mean, this is kind of a long, almost never-ending corner. Tightens up on the exit. And then we've just got a sort of, well, I say a flat-out blast. Flat-out blast for some cars through here. Taycan struggles a little bit more with understeer heading up through the next couple of corners, and then the lay-by would be the finishing point for this course. The GTR, much more noise, although had fairly similar drawbacks to the Porsche. It's quick off the line. It is, lower end of the PI in this. It doesn't quite have the same grip as some of the other cars. It does struggle. This is the thing with the GTR in Forza has never quite, to be fair to the Nissan, it's never quite had the, I don't think it has like the same clever tech that the real life one does. Forza just doesn't simulate it, so it does really struggle through these corners. Yes, the launch you know, is good, but it does struggle in the twisty bits. The Ferrari, well, I mean, we're onto a rear-wheel drive car with the Portofino, and it struggles at the first. I think with the rear-wheel drive cars, they struggle initially. Got to get some heat in the tyres, and the slow sections to begin with is not the strongest. The Ferrari, most perhaps never likely to be one of the real, very, very fastest vehicles in this lot. Sounds good, most definitely, as it runs through the course, but yeah, it struggled a little bit early on, got better in general as the route went on, and that is something we saw with the rear-wheel drives. The second of the Ferraris, the GTC4, now this is, of course, all-wheel drive. Doesn't have the deactivating all-wheel drive system in Forza. That's not quite how Forza works. Although this is a slower course, I doubt it would actually make much of a difference, really. I presume the GTC4 does actually still have that system. Regardless, Forza wouldn't if it did, and it wouldn't matter anyway, because they'd barely be getting up to speed. This is surprisingly competent, actually, up this hill climb stage. It was, yeah, not too bad at all. It looked very big and cumbersome, but it actually did quite well. The Porsche, I mean, half of this stage is really good for the Porsche. It's fantastically good handling. We saw it on the racetrack, how it just breezed past the McLaren. It's very, very good handling, but it's the least powerful car here, and it shows. It really shows on the straights. It doesn't have the acceleration. You've got to bear in mind, of course, this is uphill, so, you know, just try to accelerate uphill, you want as much power as possible. It can carry immense corner speed, there's no doubt about it, but there are some pretty, I say, significant drawbacks. Camaro was always likely to be fast, let's face it. We saw how quick the two American cars were on the circuit, and I mean, this is a similar thing. They've got good chunks of power going on, and they are fantastically good handling. Okay, the Camaro not quite as fast as the Shelby, not quite as powerful as some of the other cars, but it's still got good acceleration, and yeah, it's blisteringly quick through these corners. It can carry a lot of speed, and unlike with the 911, it can accelerate pretty nicely in between the turns. No, it's not going to be the very fast accelerating, but still good going. The McLaren, well, I would have to tackle this hill climb. To be honest, wasn't the biggest lover of the McLaren. I mean, the first part of this is tough. It is very, very low speed. McLaren desperately wanted to slide about the back end, getting loose, lighting up the rear tyres. I mean, this was a thing with the rear-wheel drive cars. On the cold tyres, they could come a little bit undone at the start of the course. It's like all of them had to deal with. It wasn't unique to the McLaren. The front end in this is just not good enough. We saw it at the actual circuit, and it was a sort of continuing theme the whole way through. It just did not really... I didn't want to get turned in. Look, it's not a bad handling car here. It's not a bad handling car by any stretch of the imagination, but when you're going up against things like that Camaro, things like the 911, that do handle very well, I mean, we've got things like the Mercedes, the AMG GTR as well, and the front end of those do get turned in to the corners. I mean, the McLaren does eventually, but it's just that little bit slower. It is pretty decent straight line speed. It's pretty good accelerating once you can get the power down. And as I said, once you've got a little bit of heat into the tyre, and it's not the biggest thing in Horizon games, but it is a little different. But once you get it going, you know, it comes alive a little bit further on into the course. I mean, it's still not quite got the front end grip you want. I'd love a little bit more, just a little bit more front end grip, and this thing would be a monster. But a little bit more front end grip, and then you've got a 600 LT or whatever. But you know, yeah, it doesn't quite carry the speed through here. Got to be careful. You see it struggling with understeer. Once you do get it turned, you can make the most of the power. It's 110 horsepower in this, so it is not light on power. As we head through this next section, carry as much speed as I can for the run up towards the finish line. And there we go. Yeah, it was a clean run. It struggled early on in the course. The faster the course got, I think the better the McLaren got. But yeah, it's the understeer. The understeer with it was pretty big problem. But there we go. The NSX, that would go next, also had some handling related issues. This was not the easiest thing to get turned into the corners either, as another car struggling with that understeer. You can see it was a bit of a handful, but it does have the all-wheel drive, I say, assistance. It can launch off of the line quite nicely in the slow speed corners early on. The NSX was able to make the most of it, but yeah, it was another one, I say, similarly struggling with a slightly uncooperative front end as we run through these faster corners. The R8, I mean, similar many ways to the NSX, does sound glorious, of course, running up here, but once again, understeer from the car. In fact, this one a little bit too wide through the barrier. Now, not a crazy amount of time, thankfully, was lost for the Audi there. You can see it's struggling to get it stopped. Again, all of these cars are very quick, all of them drive very well, but you can see the differences between the R8, for example, running up this course, and the Camaro. The Audi does look a little bit big and a little bit cumbersome. The Aston Martin, I mean, say a little biased, I do love the Aston Martin. Looks great, this one. Big chunks of power. Similar in many ways to the McLaren. Similar in a lot of ways. I think the McLaren maybe has a tiny handling advantage in a couple of places, but the Aston is faster in a straight line. It also suffered early on in the run. We're struggling with oversteer. Again, trying to get those tyres wound up, it slid about. It got better as the run went on, and things were looking pretty good for the big DBS as it powers its way to further on in the course. The Shelby was always going to be a threat here. We knew the Shelby was going to be a threat. It won the race. It was blisteringly quick there. I mean, we've got lots of power. It's got more power than the McLaren, for example, and it can actually use it. Still struggling a smidge with the traction, as all the rear-wheel drive cars were, but the front end so much better in this. It would actually get turned into these corners, although that's not to say you can't get in trouble with it if you try and carry a little bit too much speed. Big understeer for the Shelby. Yes, you can still understeer it off the track if you try and carry too much speed, but you could overall carry more speed in this than the likes of the McLaren, for example. The Mercedes, the last car to run up the course, you can see being pushed hard on the limits of the grip. The highest PI vehicle in all of this didn't quite have the same understeer problem. Struggled with grip. Again, similar story. Very slow corners to start this route, which was some of the rear-wheel drive cars undoing. The first two turns are very low-speed hairpins, and Mercedes was a little bit squiggly through those, but get up to the kind of later stages in the course, and it's driving much nicer. Yeah, you could still get it in trouble. Put your foot down too soon, it's going to spin the wheels up, it's going to slide around, etc. But yeah, as ever, really, it was just a continuing theme with these vehicles. The rear-wheel drive especially got a lot faster as they got further on, and that would be the cars sort of run through this course. Mercedes, the last one, heading up towards the line, carries good speed through these S's. It's a little wide on the exit, but no problems at all. The Merc is across the line. So the leaderboard of times, there are some surprises. Camaro takes victory from the Shelby, incredibly close between the pair of them. Big surprise for me was the Ferrari. The GTC4 would be the fastest of the all-wheel drive cars, up in third place. Even that all-wheel drive traction was not enough to overcome the two American cars. Mercedes would be fourth, but I mean, this is very, very close between all of these. Fifth and sixth, the Audi R8 and the NSX were there together, also just half a second separating the pair of those. The Audi getting the better in that one. The Porsche would be seventh. Very close battle, very, very close battle between the Porsche, the Aston Martin, and my McLaren GT. All had their sort of difficulties. The Porsche lack of power, the Aston and my McLaren's just lack of turn-in through some of these corners. We would all beat the Ferrari, although that was not too far away. The Nissan would be in 11th, struggled a little bit for grip. The Taycan, as everyone expected, would be down at the bottom. So, the circuit racing, if you like, has been completed, but what about a drag race? We're using the old abandoned airfield, the longest drag strip we have in the game. Of course, all-wheel drive cars launch well in all of them, bolt off into the distance. The McLaren's second best launching of the rear-wheel drive cars, at least, is up there with the Mercedes. The GTC4 has run out of straight line speed, is now being caught. The Taycan is vanishing off into the distance. It does run out of gears eventually, but it's certainly not running out yet. We are closing in on the all-wheel drive cars. The Aston Martin's power's kicked in, and that's off in this one. We're desperately trying to catch the NSX, but run out of straight. But it's not a bad showing from the McLaren. It's not a bad showing at all, considering it was catching the majority of the all-wheel drive cars in that one. It's just, yeah, the launch, of course, is always going to go the way of them. The Taycan takes victory. I say surprise, the R8 did well, ends up in second ahead of the GTR. The DBS, best of the rear-wheel drives, would take fourth ahead of the NSX. Then it would be my McLaren beats out the Mercedes. Kind of surprised by the Shelby. The Ford is down in 8th place ahead of the Portofino. The GTC4 launched well, but plummeted through the field. Camaro and 911 were perhaps not massively surprised by those. They're down a little bit on power at the bottom of the field. So, our next and final test would be the Nought to 100 to Nought challenge. It tests launch, acceleration, and braking. I'll be honest, I got a slight smidge wrong with the McLaren. I just locked the brakes up a tiny little bit It's always going to struggle being a rear-wheel drive car. That is always likely, or could potentially be a problem for it. The Ferrari would go next. We know it launched well. We saw in the drag race, and sure enough, there's not enough time for it to run out of top end. So the Ferrari comes to a halt. The Portofino, more along the lines of the McLaren. We were not expecting it to beat the GTC4, and sure enough, it's not actually on the brakes before it hits where the GTC4 would be. Close with the McLaren, though. Kind of a better run in some ways for the Portofino than I had, I think. The NSX, again, another all-wheel drive car. Quick off the line. Would it be able to beat that Ferrari? Not quite. It's very, very close, though. Ferrari continues to surprise with this. Because it is quite big, heavy. I say they're quite big. Oh, a lot of the all-wheel drive cars are quite big and heavy. The R8 was, quick. Was quick in the drag race. Managed to hold on in this. Would it be able to beat the NSX for this time out? It could not. The Audi, I mean, it's still a strong showing from the R8, but it could not beat the NSX. An interesting one. The GTR, well, all-wheel drive launch is strong. It might not have the fastest top speed out of this lot, but again, can get off the line. Also did quite well in the drag race, so expected to do reasonably well here, and sure enough, it's there or thereabouts with the all-wheel drive cars. A little bit further down the road, but not quite. The DBS, monstrously powerful, and once it can get going is very fast, but will it get off the line well enough? Will it have good enough brakes? And the answer to both of those questions is yes. Yes, it will. It's actually a stunning performance from the Aston Martin. No one was expecting it to drop itself quite there. Camaro, powerful brakes, but we know it's down on straight line speed compared to the rest of the cars. Once it gets to 100, it'll get stopped quickly, and sure enough, it does quite well, but took a little bit too long to get to 100. However, it does beat the McLaren. The Shelby, but it's got more power than the Camaro. It's not bad in terms of straight line speed. Should be powerful under brakes when it does get to the 100, and sure enough, it's a good showing for the Ford. It's the second best of the rear-wheel drive cars. Quite a long way further down than that Aston Martin. It shows how good that Aston Martin run was. Mercedes might be able to challenge the Aston, if anything's going to. Managed to miss it up with the drone. It goes better than the Shelby and the GTR. Still can't beat that Aston Martin in terms of the rear-wheel drive monsters. Taycan is a brute in terms of acceleration, but will the brakes be good enough? It's a heavy car. Will the brakes be good enough to get it stopped? The answer is yes. Yes, they will. It might be heavy, but it's so fast to 100, and the brakes are still good enough to pull it to a stop. The 911, we know is going to struggle with this one. Great handling car, but it is still not stopping. In fact, it's gone past almost everything before it does get on the brakes. It's quick to stop from 100. Doesn't quite have the power. I mean, that was the result we were expecting. We knew the 911 was going to struggle with this one. So we have the overall results. The Taycan wins, not by a huge margin, but Taycan takes victory. It's incredibly close between the Ferrari and Aston Martin. Well, difficult to show with the drone mode, with the photo mode, sorry. Is the Aston Martin that would get second, but only just from the Ferrari. Not a result anyone was expecting with that DBS. NSX would be next, would beat out that Audi R8. We then have decent showings from the other rear-wheel drive cars. Mercedes would beat the GTR. The Shelby, I couldn't quite beat the Nissan, but is close. Very close little segment over there. There's a little bit of a gap. We find the Camaro up next. Honestly, I know I let down the GT a little bit, although realistically I could have maybe beaten the Camaro, but I think that's about it. I think we would have sat in that gap had I not just messed the braking up a little smidge. The Portofino close in that group as well. And then we go for a little bit of a wander. There's the Porsche for on the side. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't have the straight line speed. We knew that was going to be the case. A little bit unlucky for that poor 911, just all sat on its own, but there we go. So, the leaderboard, the all-important leaderboard, and victory would go to the Shelby. Maybe not the biggest of surprises. We saw how strong it was in the circuit, and still half competent in the straight line. I think the biggest surprise for this would be is the DBS. The Aston Martin takes second. The R8 would be third ahead of the AMG GTR. The Taycan ends up fifth ahead of the Camaro, but it is very, very close from first to sixth. Incredibly close on points. The Ferrari GTC4 would be in seventh ahead of the NSX. We would then have the GTR that would beat the McLaren GT, then the 911 with the Ferrari Portofino rounding out the table. I mean, the Ferrari never lost an event, but it was just never really strong anywhere, and that is something that we saw a little bit overall with this showdown. So, I mean, as far as victors go, the American cars were very strong, and it would be the Shelby that will win all of this. Okay, I say we say this as a daily supercar. This would be an alternative to the likes of a McLaren GT or an Nissan GTR for a much more usable everyday vehicle with crazy amounts of power, and the Shelby is phenomenally fast. Around the circuits, it was way quicker than just about everything. The Camaro, maybe the Mercedes would give it a run for its money, but it was seriously good. And while not as fast on the straight line speed stuff, it was still competitive. It was still able to score some very, very good points. It was able to score more than the likes of the Camaro. So, you know, that is quite important in this. I mean, the real big surprise to me in all of this is the Aston Martin ending up in second place. I mean, a happy surprise. I'm glad to see it up there. I like the car. Fantastic car. Just did not expect to see it do so well. It wasn't the easiest to drive through the circuits, but it scored consistently. You know, it scored well enough at the tracks. It scored well enough at the hill climb. It had some good straight line speed. Very, very strong in the 0 to 100 to Nought. Must have been an amazing, perfect run on that one. But it could just score consistently everywhere. I think that's why it did so well. The Taycan also a good surprise in this one. Everyone knew it was going to be terrible at the circuits, but it also got 2 victories in the straight line speed stuff. That gave it enough points. It's so brutally fast accelerating, that Taycan. Yeah, a little bit better handling, and that thing would have won this overall easily, but it's such a difficult thing to get through the corners that it can do it. I mean, it's kind of contrasted with the Camaro. The Camaro very, very strong in the corners. Couldn't quite do the straight line speed stuff, and in the end, the Taycan came out ahead of it, only just. But there we go. I mean, the McLaren GT, unfortunately, I mean, it was by no means the worst car here, but it wasn't really strong anywhere. It wasn't great at the circuit. It wasn't great at the hill climb. It was good, but there were cars better than it. I mean, we saw the Porsche just drove past it around the track. It just doesn't quite have the grip. And then when it came to the straight line speed stuff, okay, I messed up the 0 to 100 Nought by a tiny bit, but it would have only made maybe 1 position difference. The drag race, it's strong, but not quite strong enough, and not as strong as the DBS, really. So, yeah, I think the one sort of caveat to all of this, of course, is we're testing these supposedly daily supercars, and we're only really able to test it with racing stuff. You know, the whole living with them, how comfort, etc., is something you simply cannot do in Horizon 5. So, you know, maybe the McLaren is wonderful to live with and DBS is terrible, or so on and so forth, but we can't test that. In Forza, we're doing the sort of tests that we can, and yeah, there were some surprising results. I mean, my personal favourite would be tough between the GT500 and the Aston Martin. I love both of those cars. I think I'd probably personally have the Aston, but only just in this. It's still a great showing from the 2 American cars as well. They really did fight it and mix it up with the European and Japanese machines. But there we go. That is going to be it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.